cannot manage what you do not measure, so we have to do the measurement work first. What that measurement work allows us to do is to determine what are the greatest bottlenecks in the business and what's actually working.
Welcome to the Wealth Strategy Secrets of the Ultra Wealthy podcast, where we help entrepreneurs like you exponentially build wealth through passive income to live a life of freedom and prosperity. Are you tired of paying too much in taxes, gambling your future on the stock market, and want to learn about hidden strategies for making your money work for you? And now your host, Dave Wolcott, serial entrepreneur and author of the best-selling book, The Holistic Wealth Strategy.
How's it going, everyone? And welcome back to another episode on Wealth Strategy Secrets of the Ultra Wealthy. On this show, we often talk about investing and protecting your wealth. But before you can invest, you first need to create capital. And one of the most powerful ways to do that is through entrepreneurship. Today, I'm joined by Tanner O'Brien, a business coach and partner in a family-owned ActionCOACH franchise that helps entrepreneurs transform their companies into true assets. Tanner has walked the path himself, from working in fitness and finance to building businesses, navigating partnerships, nearly running out of cash, and ultimately scaling a coaching practice that helps other owners systematize, grow, and prepare their companies for long-term freedom or exit. In our conversation, Tanner breaks down the biggest mistakes entrepreneurs make, how to avoid being the bottleneck in your business, and why building a strong foundation with systems, KPIs, and team alignment is the ultimate key to creating a business that works for you, not because of you. If you're an entrepreneur, business owner, or even thinking about starting something on the side, this episode will give you clarity on how to create the freedom of money, time, and purpose by building your business like a machine. Let's dive in. Tanner, welcome to the show.
Hey, Dave, thanks so much for having me.
Yeah, awesome to have you on today, and looking forward to today's discussion, which I know is going to be really impactful for the audience because, you know, on this show, we talk a lot about investing and really protecting your money. But on the front end, you've also got to create capital, right? And one of the best ways to actually create capital is as an entrepreneur, as a business owner, because you have a limited cap in terms of what you can make. You have exit potential. You're also most advantaged around the tax code, right? And what you can do as a business owner. And just a quick refresher to the audience, which I know all of our audience is well versed on, is Kiyosaki's cash flow quadrant, right? And what we're going to talk about today is really being on that B side of the quadrant as an actual business owner, and really creating a system out of your business is really what Tanner's going to kind of jump into today. And that's really such a key because I know it can be kind of elusive after, 20 years plus of experience myself. It's always, we can be self-employed and we want to kind of do everything ourselves as business owners. But really appreciate you being on. And why don't we kick things off with a little bit about your story and how you got here?
Oh, that's a fun one. Well, I'm excited to dive in. I think there's a lot of things that hopefully we'll be able to find some valuable nuggets for the listeners as we walk through this here today. But a little bit of background, I guess, on me. Currently in a family business, so anyone who wants to know all the horror stories that comes along with being in family business, I'm in business with both my parents, owning our ActionCOACH franchise. But rewind, 15-ish years ago, got out of school with a degree in psychology. Not wanting to go on to grad school, didn't know exactly what I wanted to do, but was really into fitness. So I became a personal trainer. And I worked for a company called Lifetime Fitness. I was up in the Twin Cities, up in Minnesota, and having a lot of fun with it, and realizing something really important that's now pivotal to a lot of things in my current career. And that's the fact that I was on 100% commission and I sucked at sales. I had no idea what I was doing. So was not really living the life that I wanted to live, leaving school, things like that. So fast forward about a year out of that, decided to go back to my hometown in Mason City, Iowa. and joined a chamber of commerce as their program director, making less than 30 grand a year. It was awesome. But learned a lot about entrepreneurship, learned a lot about local small businesses. And about that time is when my dad actually bought into the ActionCOACH franchise. So I had this opportunity to kind of start seeing his journey alongside my own, continued on, became an executive director for a downtown association, built that organization up a bit, moved into the banking world, joined a really, really, really small credit union. I'm talking like there was 7 team members. I was like number 7, and was handed the mortgage department. So anyone that understands the finance world, having zero experience, zero training, all of that kind of stuff, being handed an entire department that is mortgage and highly regulated. It's a little bit of a scary thing to learn trial by fire, which is exactly what it was. So I had a couple years of learning through that under some pretty amazing leadership at that small credit union, and then made this crazy move down to Texas. And in that transition, I ended up going to work for Bank of America. Within a year, not even a year, they promoted me up to a vice presidency role, and I was actually a wealth management lending officer, meaning I got to do mortgage loans for all of the amazing high net worth clients that were part of the Merrill team. Did that. And then COVID hit. And I got really frustrated with a lot of things that were going on during that time. Difficult to get some loans done, things like that, especially being at a larger institution. And there was this moment when my dad came to me and he said, "Hey, I've been doing this ActionCOACH franchise for a bit, and I am a single operator. I'm a single coach, can't really hire a whole bunch of team, things like that, but I'd like to start transitioning to a point where I actually own a business that can work without me one day, which means we need to build it into an actual business." So he asked me if I'd be interested in doing that with him because he loved the coaching piece, and asked me if I want to come in and really do more of the operations, sales, really all the other components of the business that hadn't really been worked on in the past. So of course I said, yeah, that sounds like a great transition, and decided to jump into that full time. That's been, right about 5 years ago now. We've grown kind of our business from there, gone through all of the same things that many of our clients go through, from learning the basics of building the business from where it was at that point, learning our financials, time mastery, marketing and sales, hiring a team, having to fire a bunch of team members, almost run out of cash, merge with a partner, split a partnership, like you name it, you pack it into a little 5-year period. And there's a lot of things that have kind of taken place and given us a way to kind of cut our teeth a little bit further on business ownership, in addition to being able to work on that with a lot of our clients. So a lot of crazy stuff in there, but this whole journey and trajectory to be able to say, how do we continue to help the local small businesses and grow those into true assets that they can exit one day and be able to live the life that they want to live.
Yeah, very cool. So tell us about, really kind of, your expertise, what you guys bring to the table, and how you can really help those business owners out there, or folks who are actually thinking about creating a business, right? Because I know we have a lot in the audience who could be either creating a side hustle, or people that might want to pivot at some point. Once they get enough passive income going, they can actually transition into a business that they're really passionate about and really love. But there's a lot of nuance to business and everything. So how do you guys really help business owners throughout the life cycle?
Yeah, so I'll answer this as a fairly simple component first, and then there's a lot of details that we can get into on it. But when it comes to how we help grow businesses, it comes down to 2 basic frameworks. So I should give a little bit of context that ActionCOACH, global franchise, been around for 32 years. It was business coaching before business coaching became cool. Really incredible organization that operates in, I believe it's about 84 countries at this point. There's literally thousands of franchise partners across the world. Through this system, there's 2 primary frameworks that we operate on that can be plugged into any business that we work with. And we've had the opportunity to work with just about any industry, from manufacturing to restaurants to quick service to marketing companies, other professional services. Again, you name it, we probably had some sort of experience there. And these systems work the same in each one. The first one is what we call the 6 steps to building a business. And it starts with the level of mastery. Mastery is broken into destination, essentially where are we going with the business? Like how do we set that end destination? Because if we don't know where we're headed, then it's really hard to navigate the path to get there. Delivery, is it consistent? Are we delivering our product or service on a consistent, really good consistency there? And then what I call resource allocation, which is broken into time and financials. Can we allocate those resources in the business effectively? Once we have mastery, then we can move into niche, which is really just marketing and sales. As we get that foundation set, then we start moving up into leverage, which is systems. It's starting the process of building team. And then we really get into team and leadership, putting a general manager in place so that the owner can start to step out and get into what we call synergy, or really the duplication phase of business. So that's really the point where the business can operate without you. And you can either duplicate it. So I've got one location, I want to go to 20, or I want to take some of that passive income and start to look at buying additional businesses, or investing in real estate, putting in the stock market, kind of whatever makes the most sense for their overall plan, which is really that top piece, which is what we call results. So every business goes through kind of that journey of 6 steps. Now, some may come to us who have a really good foundation and just need some repairs in the foundation as they're getting ready to grow. Others come to us and they're very early on. I'm just starting. I've just got kind of my side hustle starting to make a little bit of money. And we're really focused on those bottom 2 layers, really ramping up the destination, resource management, and the marketing and sales piece so they can get to the next level and start to take a step back out. So that's really framework number 1. The second framework is going to be a marketing and sales one that is all, we call it the 5 ways. We break revenue, customers, and profit down into kind of their component parts and be able to work on things that we can control. I can't tell you to go get more profit, but we can work on something like getting more leads or improving our conversion rate. There's very specific strategies that we can do to work on those. So we break it down into something that we can tactically go after and start to improve within a business.
Yeah. There's so many things to learn from franchise businesses. I love, like, it's really a machine that's operating. And one of my favorite authors is Keith Cunningham and Business Coaches. Mm-hmm. He was actually Kiyosaki's, one of his original kind of rich dad mentors that he had looked up to, and his book, The Road Less Stupid, is a phenomenal book. Really, and he talks about, creating a business like a machine, right? And you want to create this thing that can, obviously function without you if you're not there. And really be able to scale, through all the different functions, whether that be, marketing, sales, operations, all those different things. And I think that franchises do it so well because there's so much history, right, that comes into it. You said they've been around for 32 years. Did you say?
32. That's right.
So it's literally 32 years of perfecting the model, and then what you guys have also been doing, all the franchisees, really contributing to that. And, you take something like, Starbucks or McDonald's, whether you like it or not. I mean, it is a phenomenal model that, you could see how replicable it is, and you can see how it totally works as a machine when they put something in place. So I think there's probably a lot that we can all learn from that as business owners, really kind of trying to create some of the machine. And so where do you really see some of the biggest mistakes that business owners really have in running their businesses?
If I were to boil it down to one primary mistake that I traditionally see the most often, it's going to be lack of visibility or a lack of desire to know the numbers within the business. Understanding the numbers really tells the story for everything else, right? If we don't understand what those financial numbers are, whether it's just understanding the P&L and the balance sheet and kind of how to read those things, or you take it a step further and go, okay, I might know that stuff, but do I know what my gross margin is on the products or service that I provide? Do I know my acquisition cost? Do I know what the lifetime value is of my customer? If we don't know some of these metrics, it becomes very difficult to understand where some of the breakdowns end up happening within the business. So from a financial standpoint, it's some of those things, but then, we start looking at it from a marketing and sales side. So almost always I especially newer business owners that are jumping in, haven't really mastered the marketing and sales thing. They might get a couple sales, things like that happen. It looks really good, but they can't repeat it consistently because they don't know how they actually got the leads in the first place. Which lead channel did it come from? If you break down the entire pipeline from initial interest all the way through sales, how many different steps happen? For some businesses, it's 20. For others, it might be 3. But knowing what those are and what's the conversion rate between each step. Because if we see one that has a 2% conversion rate and another one that's at a 50 or 60% conversion rate, there's so much more room for improvement in the one that's 2% or 3%, those smaller numbers, and being able to just make some minor tweaks have some really big impact on downstream numbers. But it's one of those things that's just not often taught. But when we start to break down what does the math look like, how do we do these types of things, then we can move on to the next piece. So we joke that business is really math and it's people. The math part should be the easy part. We just have to make sure that we're looking at it consistently. It's not the most fun thing in a business, so it tends to be the one that is often overlooked.
Yeah. It's interesting, right? Because similar to investing, in the world of, business ownership, right? There's literally no training, right? Unless even if you go out and get an MBA, a lot of those skills you're not going to use as a business owner, but you have to learn all of these different functions. And depending on your background, where you came from, maybe you're not necessarily analytical or financial in terms of looking at those key KPIs that are really driving the business and what you need to do. But you've got to have visibility in it. And this is actually a good, lens on this for the audience as well, is if you're investing in companies, to buy, right, on the venture side or angel side, these are also really key things to look for in companies that are running really well that you might want to invest in. So KPIs, having metrics and visibility into the organization. Anything else?
Not getting the fundamentals right first. That's probably the second big thing that I tend to see. So as an example, take a business that goes out and decides to hire a bunch of team members, really focus on their operating systems and some of those types of components before understanding where their time's going, before understanding the financial numbers, before getting what we call predictable cash flow from marketing and sales. And you see this a lot from newer business owners. They're jumping into their first business, whether it's a franchise or it's a business they bought or it's something they've started from the ground and thinking, I need to go hire everybody under the sun right from day one. And they haven't learned the skill set of managing people yet. They haven't learned the skill set of what to look for and how to hire somebody. So they get people on the team and then get kind of this burned out feeling because they have 2 or 3 people that end up either not staying very long or maybe they didn't work out and they have to let them go. And they're like, well, I just don't want to hire anyone anymore because that doesn't work out for me. Like I don't want to manage a big team. But there's so many steps that come before that to know how do we install the right people on the team in the right seats and what do those seats actually look like, and starting to build that muscle that is management and then eventually moving into leadership and things like that. So jumping too quickly to team, especially if you don't have a big runway, a lot of newer businesses don't. Let's say you buy a new business, right? We see this happen all the time. New entrepreneur comes in, they decide they're going to buy a business. They look at the purchase cost, things like that. They buy the business, but they don't allocate enough for operating funds for the first 3 to 6 months. And they run out of runway. And if you do that, then it's really difficult to hire team members when they haven't been in there before. And if you haven't learned the skill set of managing, it can be very easy to burn through that cash flow and not be able to recoup it as quickly as possible. And that tends to be where we see some of these smaller businesses get into trouble early on.
Hey, it's Dave Wolcott here. Let me ask you something. Are you tired of the same old financial advice that leaves you spinning your wheels? If you're ready to discover the real secrets the ultra wealthy use to build unstoppable wealth, then I've got something just for you. My new book, The Holistic Wealth Strategy, is your ticket to learning the proven strategies that the top 1% don't want you to know. This book isn't just about money. It's about building a life of purpose, freedom, and lasting impact. And I want to give you a free copy. Visit holisticwealthstrategy.com and get yours today. It's time to level up your financial game and create the future you deserve.
Yeah, I mean, the numbers are quite staggering, right? I mean, isn't it? It's like less than 5% make it through even year one, and then only 1% make it to like year five, or what? I mean, you probably know the stats, but it's definitely the odds are against you, right?
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of risk when it comes to business, and it goes back to we oftentimes don't know what we don't know, and some of those things that we don't know can really bite us in the butt. But there is a path forward, and I think that's where having mentors or folks that you can trust in your corner, whether it's just mentors that it's folks like yourself, it's business coaches like what we do, but having somebody that can help you see around those corners really increases that ability to make it more than just a year or just the first 5 years.
Yeah. Do you guys recommend like a typical ramp rate, or maybe this is in your framework that you have or something? So, I think the reality is, right, most entrepreneurs are really bootstrapped, right, and capital constrained. So as they try to scale the business, I mean, how do they make, strategic decisions around how to allocate resources, not only money, but, time, like where do you spend your time? Because it could be marketing, could be sales, could be operations, could be, anything, right?
Mm-hmm. I think there's a lot of different ways to effectively answer that question. It's going to depend on the business and where they're at. I think for me, it's always going to come back down to the numbers. Are we understanding what those numbers look like on the front end? If we have the proper model on the front end, it can be easier to recoup cash more quickly. That being said, really understanding the numbers. I'm going to come back to that because I think that's really the most important piece. If we understand what that looks like, then we can effectively plan out what does the first 1, 2, 3, 4 months look like. Do we have enough runway? What does that number need to be? If it's a larger business, we may need, and it's a very capital intensive type business with longer payment periods, then the ramp up period may take longer, right? It's just going to take us longer to cycle through cash. If it's a services based business, similar to what we are, the cash cycle is so much faster. So having 1 to 2 months of operating capital is easier than a manufacturing company that may have a 90 plus day cash return window.
Yeah, that makes sense. And are you targeting some type of ideal metrics, like let's say a 10 to 15% EBITDA type of business?
Traditionally, I'm going to be a big fan of 20% where possible to get to profitability. But that's going to be driving to, can we run the business effective so that the profitability of a business can fund the rest of your life, right? We're a big believer in the fact that you don't get into business just because you love business and want to work 80 hours a week and all of that fun stuff. The reason most of us get into business tends to be freedom. It tends to be financial freedom, time freedom, and to be able to live this life that we want to live. So how does the business play the role that's going to allow you to achieve that? So focusing more on the 20% where possible, and some industries may be slightly lower, but there's definitely some industries that should have something higher, probably closer to 30 or 35% in terms of an EBITDA margin. And ultimately, where do we want to go from an exit standpoint? If the business is really small, businesses are going to be valued on a multiple of profitability by and large. So being able to ensure that we have consistent profitability and we can show what that cash flow looks like, and does that number match up with what you would need that exit to be to live the life that you want to live?
Yeah. How about from an executive compensation standpoint? I know that, this is actually a pretty confusing topic, right? That should, seems like it would be pretty straightforward. But a lot of our audience are very savvy investors. And again, one of the reasons as an entrepreneur that you can, take most advantage of the tax code is being a business owner, right? Doing various things. So do you have any recommendations in terms of that? I've literally read books that people do everything from setting it up like a sports team where you have a cap You have like a salary cap with what you pay people, including yourself, right? And then you move into the profit side of the equation. That can be kind of an upside for a profit. Or is it reasonable compensation until you've reached a certain threshold that then people can start investing from the business? Or do you have any guidelines there you can talk about?
Yeah, I'll give you some of the pieces that I've been taught and how we kind of share some of this knowledge with. Now, I'll put the caveat on this on some of the ideas or structures of ways of doing this. Make sure you're consulting the right professionals, things like that. And when it comes to true executive comp, especially as we think about for many of our clients, there are some resources that we will refer out to when it really starts to look at some complex compensation type things. But that being said, traditionally how I would look at it, or how I would talk to many of our clients if they're looking for some general guidance. I'm starting to run this business. I'm taking some money out as salary, starting to look at profitability. How do we structure this thing for long-term growth and being able to build wealth and investing? I tend to be a big fan of having really the holding company, or what we would call kind of the wealth entity that ultimately would own the ownership within the businesses that you own. So for me, as an example, I've got my wealth entity. Our coaching company is one of the entities that owns. I've got a secondary business that is also owned by that company. When I start investing in real estate, things like that, all of it will fall underneath that wealth entity. So anything that I don't need to take as salary is then funneled up through into the wealth company, and then it can be either distributed from there or reallocated into other investments, depending on what that ultimately looks like. For me, I'm a big fan of looking at businesses to buy. That just tends to be my skill set, so that's where I tend to look. So being able to have the entity there that's ready to make a purchase for a business tends to make a lot of sense. So it gives a little bit of flexibility or understanding of how to kind of flow some of those things through. Tend to be a big fan of if we're shooting for 20% profitability in a business, we should be setting some profitability aside every single month so that we can start getting in the habit of keeping money and being able to use that for investing. But tends to be start with fill your reserve account. Make sure you've got 6 to 9 months of reserves. And then once that piece is taken care of, then start looking at the investments that make the most sense for you. And that's traditionally where we will then outsource and refer out to all of our wonderful partners that understand investing and some of that stuff a little bit deeper than we do.
Yeah. Now, how about on the exit side? How should people be really building their businesses if they have an exit, in mind at some point in the future? Is there anything that they can be doing today, or maybe maybe that exit is even closer than we think? How should they be thinking to line this up strategically?
Yeah. So I'll preface this by answering the question that some people may be asking, which is essentially, well, what if I don't want to exit my business? And to my general response to that is everybody will exit their business, whether it's our choice or not, whether it's vertically or horizontally. So we might as well prepare for having a business that can one day work or be able to be passed on without us. So that being said, what can we do? The walking through kind of these 6 steps is going to be the most critical component of understanding what that looks like. The ultimate goal is that there is consistent cash flow coming through the business. There is nothing that is tied to you as the owner anymore. We've got to get the things that are inside our head out into either systems, processes, or people. One of the biggest things when it comes to a business transaction. So if I go and I'm going to look at a business today and I'm going to buy a business, I will look at it not just on the multiple of net income, but there will be subtractions and add backs, right? And one of the subtractions against their value is going to be, what are all the things that the owner does in the business that nobody else can do? And if they tell me it's the sales, it's the delivery, it's this, and this, each one of those is going to be a person that we have to then add back into the business to be able to sustain the cash flow that it currently has. So that's all going to be discounting against net income and ultimately decreasing the value of the business. So the more as owners we can start to step away from the doing work and starting to put people in place that can do it and have the systems that they can run, right? We build systems so people can build, or people can run the systems. Those are the most important things that we can do. Now, for some businesses, we can do this inside of a year to 2 years. It's a lot of work in most cases if you have not been thinking about this before, but it can be done in that time period. For many others, it's, hey, I'm 3, 5, 7 years out from even considering an exit. This is the perfect time to start building that. And you may reach that point where you can step away completely earlier, but it then gives you the flexibility and gives you the choice of doing a deal on your terms versus having to take a deal because it's the only terms you're going to get.
Yeah, makes sense. And your model, you guys offer what, coaching and also education around how to help people get there?
Yes, I'd say by and large, it tends to be the coaching side of things. So really the accountability partner, the one that most businesses have a pretty good sense of the things that need to be done, but still don't do them. I talk to so many business owners that are like, yes, I know I should be doing that, but I still don't do it, right? So that is a big component of where we come in, and then being able to look around the corner and say, here's some things that you haven't thought about before. Here's some other examples of other industries that you've been in, things like that. From an education standpoint, whether it's for team members or early stage entrepreneurs is traditionally where the education really fits in. So early stage entrepreneurs, not quite ready for some sort of coaching piece yet, but they may need 12 weeks on just understanding the basics of business. They may need to go through a 12-week sales program. Sales team members, management team members, people that aren't traditionally trained in those fields, but are now playing those roles within business, being able to provide effective education that then ties into the longevity of the business and being able to support those skill sets. So a little bit of the education side and a lot on the accountability partner and coaching side of things.
If you think every entrepreneur is about to exit at some point in time, what are the top things that they could really do to prepare themselves now?
Top things that they could do to prepare today, if they're looking to exit, I think the very first thing that any entrepreneur could do today is a true time study or time audit. Take a look at everything that you currently do, figure out how much time that's taking, and then see if there's anybody else in the business that can take the things off your plate. Whether or not you actually can move them off today or not, being able to identify what are those things that you're doing is probably step number one, because then we can start to build a plan around how do we start offloading those effectively. Which are the team members we need to hire next? What are the systems we need to build around each of these things? Where am I the bottleneck as the business owner? That's probably the number one thing that you could do that is easiest first step to take. Then we can start to build a plan and look at what are some of the numbers that we're not currently tracking within the business. Let's do a deep evaluation of our marketing and sales, and then start moving into some of the systems and the team components. So first, one initial thing would probably be time study would be the easiest, most impactful thing that any business owner could do.
And how would you evaluate for allocation of resources, right? I mean, that's something I struggle with all the time, right? There's always something to do, right? If we focus on adding a new team member to the team, right, we're going to increase, customer service or something, right? And that's going to, have some type of return to it, right? Or do we invest in some new, marketing platform or process or something like that, which, would have a return, had a particular payback, but you're really making assumptions at the end of the day. You're making a lot of different assumptions on how something could work. So how do you effectively coach people on how to make the best decisions with really what they have?
Yeah, that's a really good question. So there's a couple of ways that I tend to look at this. The first one's going to be, I'm a huge believer in you cannot manage what you do not measure. So we have to do the measurement work first. What that measurement work allows us to do is to determine what are the greatest bottlenecks in the business and what's actually working. So if we take marketing as an example, I'm a firm believer that any marketing strategy can and does work. Like, it blows my mind. I know a $500 million company that is heavily focused on telemarketing and it works for them. I never pick up my phone if it's a number I don't recognize, but it's a strategy that does work consistently. But they've figured out how to make it work. So in any business, I look for the things that are working first. And then we do more of that. And we make some tweaks to make it a little bit better. And then we do more and we do better until we are finally ready to do something different or new. So that framework is going to be the first thing that I'm going to do. It's the most cost effective. It's already proven and has historical results. So we're not guessing on something. We can start to focus on things that we already know are going to provide the results that we're looking for and continue to amplify them until the results no longer hold. Now, that can be a marketing strategy. That could be sales conversion. That could be how we manage the effectiveness within our fulfillment or delivery. But then we start looking at what are the biggest constraints. If I were to triple my lead flow tomorrow, what's going to break first? Can my sales team manage that level of lead flow? The answer is no. Then there may be a bottleneck there that is one of the next hires that we need to make. Maybe that's not the constraint, but we just can't fulfill on that level. So then we look at maybe that's the first constraint that we're going to alleviate and fix before we start to increase the level on the front end. So those are going to be the first components that I'm looking at. It's a long answer because it really does depend on, the business that we're talking to and kind of where they're at in their journey. From a time perspective, I think one of the biggest things is when you do a time study, you do a time audit, and you find things that you can take off your plate. It's knowing what are you going to do with that time if it's freed up for you. Most of us want to go, I'm working 80 hours a week. I'd love to just have 5 hours back. But what do we do with those 5 hours? Can we allocate that now to something that's a higher leveraged item within the business until we can finally offload that off our plate? Because if we want to pay for this team member that we're going to hire, we want to ensure that we're doing our higher leveraged work, our higher dollar per hour work that's going to allow that to be effective more quickly.
Yeah, makes sense. Tanner, if you could give just one piece of advice to the audience about how they could get to that freedom, right? Freedom of money, freedom of time, freedom of purpose, what would it be?
I can give one piece of advice. Take the time to build a solid foundation. It's boring. It's tedious. It's not always the most fun thing to do. But if you get the foundation right, the scalability on the other side to get you to the end result faster is so much more effective and goes so much faster than you think it ever would.
Yeah. Awesome. Really appreciate having you on the show today. Some great pieces of wisdom. And if anyone would like to reach out and learn more about, your coaching, your services, where's the best place?
Yeah. So I would say I'll give you my social profiles. I am Tanner O'Brien 001 on just about every platform. It's a really easy way to connect with me. LinkedIn's going to be probably the easiest one. You can email me directly at tannerobrien@actioncoach.com. And from there, we can point you in the direction that's best for you.
Awesome. Thanks again, Tanner. Really appreciate it.
Thanks, Dave. Appreciate you letting me be on today.
You bet.
Thanks for listening to this episode of Wealth Strategy Secrets. If you'd like to get a free copy of the book, go to holisticwealthstrategy.com. That's holisticwealthstrategy.com. If you'd like to learn more about upcoming opportunities at Pantheon, please visit pantheoninvest.com. That's pantheoninvest.com.